Now into our second and final segment into this edition of the program. But again, just a gentle reminder that you're still watching Wake Up Silent on UYV television on channel 33, radio 101.7 FM, and also on our DSTV channel 399. Don't forget to be a part of the program simply by dropping us those comments, questions, and contributions on our AYV News Facebook page. And as we go along with the program, we'll see the need to, of course, to read through them. And now, President Julius Maada Bio has announced that Sierra Leone will conduct a nationwide population and housing census from December 2nd to the 15th, 2025. This announcement follows the successful passage of Statutory Instrument number 8 of 2024, which was laid or tabled in the House of Parliament on 8th August 2024. It became effective on August 29th, 2024. In his address to the nation, President Bio emphasized that the 2025 census is aligned with the decennial census calendar and is crucial for the country's development planning. He pointed out that the 2025 census will provide essential data for implementing Sierra Leone's 2024 to 2030 medium-term national development plan and assessing progress towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals with a deadline of 2030. So in the studios this morning to discuss what it means for us as a nation, we have been joined by Sidia Tunis, who is the National Publicity Secretary of the main opposition APC party, and similarly so Alpha Kanu, who is the presidential spokesman. It's a pleasure having you both in the studios this morning.
Good morning, thanks for having me.
Sidi, I start off with you. The president has already made this announcement, and the essence he said is, of course, it will align to the country's national development agenda and also to the SDG, which has a deadline of 2030. You coming from the opposition, what does it mean for us as a nation?
I mean, this is expected. In the first place, as you mentioned in the statement, it is in line with our constitutional provision for the senior census. And also, so far, we've seen the laws and procedures are followed as far as with the statutory instrument being laid in Parliament, and then after the 21 days before we had a proclamation from the president. You know, so for us as an opposition, we feel it is important because censuses are done to determine how we allocate resources, to determine our development agenda as a nation. Just earlier, you were discussing the issues about teachers. You know, so these are all things that are captured as far as our censuses are concerned. You know the population size of your country, and then it also helps how you distribute wealth based on how the population allocations are as far as census figures are concerned relating to, you know, different areas in your country. And so we feel as an opposition, it is important for us to fully participate, and we will fully participate in this upcoming census. However, we probably, as we go along in the program, there are things that we feel we have to understand. Whether, in fact, one, we are ready as a nation, because when you look at the timeline from now to December, it's just a little over a year, and census process is tedious, it is expensive. I know it will cost us nothing less than $30 million, maybe, from what I'm hearing. Do we have the resources? Do we have the expertise to take on this particular census program? Do we have enough time to be able to complete so that we have actual and credible census done, you know, meeting international standards? How involved are our development partners, especially the UNFPA, which is the competent international UN organization, with the expertise to, help with census of this nation. So these are all things that we may have to talk about going forward. And also, we have to talk about the inclusivity nature of it. The Census Act itself made provision for certain committees to be set up, such as the statutory committee, the technical committee, which should be involving and encompassing of all different stakeholders, including political parties. So going forward, these are things that we may have to discuss, but it is important, and I have to state here as the spokesperson of the main opposition that our party looks forward to it, will fully participate, and we will put out mechanisms for also making sure that our membership, our supporters, and the entire nation participate in this census process.
See, the relevance of the census process can't be overemphasized. The data which will be released by the outcome of the process, of course, needs no emphasis. But over time, we've had complexities in terms of the outcome of census that have been conducted in the country. What's the fear of the EPC at this particular moment, and as much as the data has already been pronounced?
Many countries, do censuses for development purposes, but also to assist in making sure that we have fairness in the way we distribute resources. And which is why in countries after censuses, you hear about delimitations, you hear about distribution and all of these things. So it should be developmental focus, more so not entirely political focus. The problems we have had in the past is when we tend to, focus our censuses on politics rather than development. And this remains the concern, not only for us as political parties, and it should be the concern for citizens, because it is costly to conduct censuses. And so if we as a nation know that the main purpose of conducting census is to ensure that we are able to see how we distribute the mega resources we have in a way that we actually catering to the needs of certain parts of the country, which may lack certain necessities as opposed to other areas, then we must be honest and sincere, and that must remain to be the focus of the main reason why we're doing the census in the first place. So, which is why, as we now start the discussions, around the 2025 census, we must all, as stakeholders, focus on the actual need why this census is to be done, and making sure that at the end of the day, we bring along the citizenry. So we are all very much confident that, okay, we are set out to achieve why we really want to do census. At the end of the day, somebody does not try to use it or to manipulate us to give a certain set of people a political advantage. That should not be the focus, which is why it is important that the process be transparent, the process be inclusive. Where technical expertise are needed, we have them, so that at the end of the day, the census itself can be done correctly, and the data that we'll get from the census will be credible. So everybody, institutions, governments, international partners, NGOs, we can all be able to use the census to help us develop this country.
Alpha Khan, it's a pleasure having you once again.
Thank you very much.
I remember before going into the 2023 elections, there were a lot of speculations from the public side as to the total number of people that are within Sierra Leone. Of course, from the intro, it's very clear, and even the president has again emphasized him, that this process is meant to help determine development of the country, and it's affixed to the SDG 30. But again, in Sierra Leone, we've seen a slight shift in that direction, as most times these results, the target of the results is on politics. So just watching through statistics Sierra Leone page, I notice the total number of people within Sierra Leone slightly above 7.5, 7,500,000 people, when in actual fact, over time we've had 8 million people also to speak. Alpha Khan, how integral is this process that we're about to commence?
Thank you very much. First, let me thank my younger brother here and congratulate him for the message he brought to us, that the party which he represents as a spokesman is ready to support and work with government fully in the census. It hasn't been so in the past, so we will be looking towards a very successful, transparent, credible, and acceptable census this time, because the main opposition has already declared that they will support the process. But they have already demonstrated that in the fact that the instrument was laid in Parliament for 21 days and nobody from the opposition or from government raised any issues on it, which means they realize and accept the fact that the census is a necessity for sustainable development and democratic governance. It's not new. Even our Lord Jesus Christ was born on census night over 2,000 years ago. They went to Bethlehem to be counted. In 1086, in England, William the Conqueror declared a census that lasted for several months so that they know how many people live in the country that they have to take care of and how much money they can raise to look after the welfare of the people. The USA in August 1790, they also started their censuses. These are all important. In Sierra Leone, the earliest census was 1802, although it was only concentrated here in the western area. And then in 1963, we started having the modern census methods with new methodologies. But we see that in 1963, our population was only 2,180,000. And then in 1974, it's 2,735,000. By 2004, it was 4,996,000. 2015, it almost doubled. So it is necessary from time to time to know the number of people and the household surveys in the country to be done. The necessity for that is not only for political reasons. It's like my brother said, it's how do you distribute the meager resources you have? Because resources are never enough. And that in itself demands that you have a true representation, a true figure of the number of people you have in the country.
As you speak of resources, Alpha Khan, this brings us to the history of the last census we had as a nation. One of the challenges with that was Sierra Leone had been working with the World Bank, who was also supporting by funding that. Whatever happened, they pulled out. So Sierra Leone funded its census. Now the president has made a declaration of census for 2025. Let's talk about the financial aspect. What has the president been saying as to how we will fund the census?
I think the president was very clear in the declaration yesterday that the government will provide the full complement of resources to conduct this census. The pulling out of the World Bank was unfortunate in 2021. But nevertheless, the country was able to support that census that year. And I believe that, as they say in on local parlance, as the way man say they stone you don't match the stone.
Is the president squarely looking again at using internal resources from country as opposed to seeking help from some of our international partners? Because before 2021 census, previously, we had international partners supporting, funding census. It was never a thing where it's Sierra Leone's internal resources, 100% funding our census. It was 2021 that they pulled out for whatever reasons. Is the president not considering utilizing some of those partners?
No,
especially when the impact of the census is not just, as both of you have submitted, not just about politics, but also even in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
You've just hit the nail on the head. It is a necessity to carry out the census. They say, if they rob you back, throw away water. We are ready to throw water on our backs. We have never said at any time that we can do without the support of donor partners or international development partners, unless for some reason or the other they decide not to contest, not to support us. But when the president talks about us being fully ready to conduct this election, this census, it's because they have looked at all the algorithms, how they can put the funding together internally, support from international donor partners and development partners to get this on track.
But
so I believe
I do want to understand, because you are the president's spokesperson, you have more encounter with him than ordinary citizens would have an opportunity to access him. Before we went into this session, we just spoke to SLTU and basic education. Subsidies have not been paid. Challenge again with state resources. Too many issues emerging. It's leaving us with a scale of preference. What's plan A and what's plan B for the president in this census? Is plan A state resources to fund it, or international partners? Which is A and which is B?
It's a combination. It's always been A and B.
But which one is plan A?
Plan A, you have to look at your internal resources. You have to rely on yourself first. Well, that plan A can be supported by extra support from other people, which we have been doing. We have relied heavily for a long time now on budgetary support from donor partners. That hasn't changed. And when we have important issues like the census, the UNFPA, the World Bank, and all the others are there to assist, and none of them has said that they are not going to support this. For the president to come out and pronounce that, him being a responsible leader, would have looked at all the parameters that can support this program before he says it. Because like they say, he is a man who, before he says something, he already knows the path which he's going to take. And that is what he has done. And I believe that he's confident it will be done. He has had discussions several times. I mean, very recently they had the DPAC meeting where donor partners and government meet and discuss. And some of the discussions will hinge on the population census. Okay. And that is what has happened. So His Excellency would not have made that statement vacuously, that he is ready to do when he knows that at some point he can be checkmated by a limited amount of resources. For him to say that, one, because it's a government dictation, it is a democratic necessity for us to have this decennial census. As a responsible leader, he is obliging himself to follow the dictates of the law. That is why he started by laying the statutory instrument, which is the process that he has to go through, the due process which is going on, and then he makes the declaration. But before you do that, like I said, we have this local parlance. If I say the stone, you don't my stone. Okay. So he must have stepped on the stone.
Alpha Khan.
He must have made his...
Alpha Khan, just as Fabian mentioned, during the 2021 census, a report that was issued by the World Bank states that disbursement of the funds, the funds to carry on the census, were based on the fact, were contingent on the fact that government at that point in time failed to satisfactorily complete several critical actions, including adequate training of enumerators that will, of course, cascade the process through. At this particular moment, CD also mentioned $30 million is like a flat rate to conduct this.
That's an estimate.
An estimate, but taking into account the economic conditions, the economic, the state of things in country, it might even surpass that amount. Funding-wise, where are we as a nation to fund this?
You are asking questions which, for me, are a bit rhetorical. Rhetorical in the sense that the people who are responsible for revenue generation and revenue.
Thankfully, you are providing answers to that rhetorical question.
Yes,
and
revenue
so it ceases from being a rhetorical question, Alpha Khan.
No. I have to put you on the track.
Put the public on the track.
As well.
Put the public on the track.
As well, on that rhetorical question, to make sure that you and the other public outside there understand that His Excellency will not make a vacuous statement about councils. He does know where this money is going to come from local resources, as well as support from outside. The statement you mentioned from the World Bank. The World Bank here, at that time, they are enablers, they are helpers, they are not the protagonists. The protagonists of the census are the Sierra Leoneans. The government of Sierra Leone has the sole responsibility to do that. So if one of our donor partners decides they're not going to support the program because of X, Y, Z, that doesn't mean that the government has to abort its democratic obligation. And they're doing that. And that was done. And this time, His Excellency has given us enough time.
That was more the reason why the other end, at that time, was a bit skeptical as to the process itself, Alpha Khan.
Which other end?
You are a politician, and you've been
when you say the other end,
and you've been following things in this country. And
when you say the other end,
you should have.
Please be specific. When you say the other end, who is the other end, or what is the other end?
Alpha Khan, you've yet to answer that question.
No, I will not until you tell me who the other end was.
Now let me usher in Sidi Ayat Yunis. Sidi Ayat Yunis, have we actually utilized results from the election? Results from the census, as it relates to the intended purpose, because most times, the census results are used for developmental purposes. Just as you mentioned, the teachers, you say the number of teachers in country, the number of nurses, the number of even vehicles that are within Sierra Leone that are blind, that are even in good condition also to speak.
Even the total number of citizens or people living in your country. So the fact of the matter is, the 2021 census was never for developmental purposes, and we raised that severally, but we were ignored. And the international partners pulled out because they noticed quite early, we were not following benchmarks as far as international, benchmarks to conducting censuses are concerned. We did not have the requisite expertise, we did not have the equipment, we did not have enough money. So that brings me to the questions you are asking. These are genuine questions. The president did tell us in 2021 that we had the resources, and it turned out we did not have the resources. And in the end, what happened? We went through a challenging census process which data we could not use, even for the very purpose that they conducted the census, which was to help them, redistribute. They could not use the data to redistribute because it was inaccurate. even to determine the threshold for the proportional representation they introduced, they could not use the data for that purpose because the census data was not credible. So what did they do? The ECSL devised a formula that we have never heard of before. They used the 2015 census figures, 2021 census figures, added the two together and divided by 2 to get a median, which is what they use to determine the threshold for the proportional representation. We do not want to go down that route again, which is why it is important that we plan, we determine where the resources are coming from. It is not so much just by mere proclamation. We have to bring our partners on board. We have to ensure that at the end of the day, this is not political season. We are able to use these particular census figures to, determine how we map the next development phase of our country. They just brought in the development, proposal for the next 5 years, which will take us to about 2028 or 2029. So we have to look at how this census fits into that development plan that they already have put forward as a government. But more so, it is important that at the end of the day, we are able to use the data, which is why it is important that these gray areas where we have mainly had challenges, we have to be able to speak on them. 2021, we saw even the equipment we had to borrow from Kenya, and we could not use them because the staff that they recruited, did not have the requisite expertise to use them. The few who had the requisite expertise to use them held on to the, equipment at the end of the census because they were not paid. So they held on, waiting for their payments before they could release the data. We cannot, as a nation, continue to waste resources in that manner. We have to be able, to spend our resources wisely. If we are to conduct censuses, we have to ensure that we have all of the requisite parameters in place, so at the end of the day, we successfully do it. It should serve the purpose for which we are doing it, and the resources spent at the end of the day must be acceptable, because the results that we have is credible enough. We all have buying, our international partners have buying, and the data is useful to us as a nation as far as development is concerned.
City, a decennial census happens once every 10 years, and the result of that census, aside from the developmental contribution it has, it does also affect politics. 2028 is not that far off. Your party would also have to suffer or benefit from the impact.
Certainly.
With that understood and lessons learned from 2021, how also your party's abstinence or encouraging your members to abstain also contributed to affect the process. In this 2025 census, what would the APC be bringing on the table as main opposition in terms of support to the census project? To the census activity, even if it's for selfish reasons, to say you also stand to either benefit or be affected negatively by the outcome?
So that is a very good question you just asked, Fabian. And people have to understand that in 2021, we just did not pull out. Our emphasis were on making sure that the right things are done. First of all, in 2021, for example, the proclamation was done before even the statutory instrument was laid in Parliament. So that was our very first concern. And when the process started, we attended the statutory committee meetings, but then when we saw that, the intentions were not what was communicated to the public, which was why we pulled out and we raised the alarm. And that is the very reasons why the international partners also pulled out. So it is not like we were reluctant. I mean, the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, you're right. And this is not only limited to Sierra Leone. Even in advanced countries, when censuses are done, it is very possible that you will see redistricting or redelimitation of boundaries. In the United States, in 2020, before the 2022 elections, censuses were done, and some delimitations were done which affected both political parties. But when the data is credible, when everyone is involved, you know that we are using a credible data to determine how these redistricting are done, how these boundary delimitations are done. What we will bring is to make sure that we come on board. We are able to work with the statutory institutions that are responsible to conduct censuses. The statutory provisions by the Census Act are followed so that those committees are set up that will ensure that the stakeholders are involved, the technical expertise are available, our international friends are on board. So at the end of the day, the data that will come out of this census process is credible. And we hope and pray that the government will allow for that to happen. So at the end of the day, we don't see this as another manipulation to give political advantage to one political party as against the other. The people of this country should be at the heart of this census. The development of this country should be at the heart of this census. We missed it in 2021. We should not miss it in 2025. We
would head to sports in a bit, but let me come back to you, Alpha Khan. The main opposition raised some concern. Civil society members of the public raised some concerns. Out the way they turned out, and the impact of that census result didn't do 100% of the good it intended to do. With that lesson learned going into 2025 census, how much room, how much space is in this room for the conversation on feedback from the main opposition as to how things should be done?
I think from my introduction, first thing I said was to commend the statement made by the spokesman for the main opposition, the All People's Congress, when he stated that they are ready to support this. In 2021, it was the opposite. Obstructed it. And when you obstruct, you don't expect it 100%. Because the results were not what they should have been, people abstained because of the encouragement by the opposition.
But part of those reasons, but part of those reasons they said were because also President Bio and the government were also not listening to some of their concerns they were putting on the table.
I was in the SAPC in 2015. The SLPP in opposition then made similar objections. We still went ahead and did the census. Well, they didn't obstruct it. They didn't go out to stop people from being counted. That is why I said we are looking forward to a credible and inclusive...
Sorry, so when you say we now, who do you refer to?
As a country this time.
Okay.
We're looking forward to a credible and inclusive process this time, because those that caused the problems in 2021 have said that this time, maybe because of lessons learned, have now agreed to accompany the process, work fully with government.
But it seems as if that President Bio himself is now going off of lessons learned. Sidi just spoke about 2021. He made the proclamation before even tabling it in Parliament. But this time around, it went through Parliament before his declaration.
So that is why he's saying that they are ready to support it.
But that in itself is justification that even President Bio perhaps acknowledges that things were not done the right way in 2021.
Well,
because there's a change of methodology this time around.
Isn't that the behavior of a noble man when you accept that you made a mistake? He's not infallible. He's not an angel. He's a human being like you. You could put one step before the other, but that was corrected. The proclamation was made. And then the declaration, the instrument was then laid. It didn't stop the instrument for being debated in Parliament. It was debated. But then it went through after the 21 days. So today, I am saying that we have all learned our lessons, that Sierra Leone is the focus here. And the people of Sierra Leone should be, like you said, at the heart of everything that we are doing. And because they say that, I and my colleagues believe that we are going to have a credible census this time.
Okay.
Because we want the opposition, we want everybody to get involved. And they will be involved. The door is open, the space is open. And I think the problems that happened before, like 2015 and 2021, is not enough public education. But this time, the government is determined to open the space for dialogue, for discussions, and for feedback.
We're trying to round off the conversation now. So many messages on our Facebook platform, and it would be challenging to read them because of the time. So we apologize for skipping those messages for this segment. But gentlemen, in just a few seconds, let's get your closing curtsies as we round off this segment, starting with you, CDI Tunis.
I mean, it is, you know, kind of refreshing, if I can put it that way, that the government is finally accepted that 2021 was a mistake. It is a grave mistake that cost us over $10 million. And I hope and pray that we do not make such mistake going forward. But let me reassure the people of this country that as an opposition, we will fully participate in the census process. We have already started putting in place mechanisms to ensure that we engage our membership, educate them, sensitize them so that they see the need to participate to be fully counted. We also will put mechanisms in place to ensure that we monitor the process and we engage the institutions that will be responsible so that the committees that are to be set up according to the Census Act are set up. The statutory committee will be involving and inclusive enough to have all of the different institutions and stakeholders involved. And at the end of the day, whatever data that we come out with should be credible enough to be accepted by all.
Let's take that as a full stop. Yes, Alpha Khan.
Thank you very much. What we are focused on is development, and development is a process. It improves every day, depending on the commitment of the citizens and the leaders of those citizens. This government is totally committed to delivering not only on the 5 game changes, but according to the medium-term National Economic Development Plan, which falls in line with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And we expect everybody, including the opposition, to work with us this time to make sure that Sierra Leone is put in focus, that we get numbers that reflect the real population of the country, the way to affect how resources are allocated, and to make sure that development reaches every corner, every nook and cranny. When you do that, as a country, you are sure to move along and succeed together. And we want to succeed with the APC alongside this process. So we thank them for that commitment, and I am sure that our people also this time will not lend themselves to the influence of others telling them not to be counted. When you're not counted, like you said, Vivian, there's going to be a negative impact on you and what you expect to get in terms of schools, in terms of hospitals, in terms of even the provisions that are supposed to come by your way and the resources that will come into the country. So let us all work together for the sake of Sierra Leone. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you so very much, Alpha Khan, who is the government spokesman.
Presidential
spokesman. I think we made a mistake at the time. But again, thank you so very much, Alpha Khan, and also CDI Tunis, who is coming from the All People's Congress Party. And it's been a worthwhile conversation.